improv club / speaking fellow social event.
Oh my gosh.
A soiree of sorts. Not actually, but I said mixer. It's really
Hi everyone!
Hi, Maddie.
Welcome to January Kohn Lectures. Today we'll be hearing from two of our speaking fellows. Up first we have Caro. Caro is a senior, double majoring in health policy and Japanese.
Okie dokie. Can y'all hear me good?
Yes.
Okay, sick. So I'm going to be talking about speech anxiety, and I have a fun little guide that I wanted to share with y'all because I have like a history with speech anxiety, and I thought that it would be great to do sort of like a fun cat-themed speech anxiety presentation. I wonder if this will actually pull up or not.
How is this helping your anxiety to not have your slides up?
Right now I'm fine, but if it takes more than a minute, not fine. Ooh. You know, no. How many of y'all have dealt with speech anxiety? Oh, full crowd?
Full crowd.
Oh my god, this is stunning. That's actually not stunning.
Okay, it's coming on.
Ooh, I didn't know this was a Panasonic. You have a thing for Panasonic? Because this is my first time seeing the projector for. I feel like Panasonic's all over.
Yay!
Okay, so yeah, I'm giving a Scaredy Cat's Guide to Tackling Speech Anxiety. It will have a cat pun. I'm very excited to do it. So I wanted to do it because I have a history with speech anxiety. I know that a lot of people have it. It's not super talked about, and so I thought that if I could give some tips and tricks, and then we can chat a little bit about what works for you guys, what doesn't, I thought that could be a great way to start. So a lot of y'all raised your hands. And then we can dive a little bit more into what you guys know about already and what you don't, but a little bit about what I'm going to talk about, what it is, and then I thought we could do a quick grounding exercise. We'll see how much it can work in the iZone, and then I want to talk about some physical prep work that people can do before they do a presentation, physical work or day of work, and then some really common approaches I see or like advice that I see, and then key takeaways. So before we start, I wanted to ask you guys, what are some common tips that you often hear about when it comes to speech anxiety? And then are there any that you think work particularly well? Open to the crowd. Yeah, Aurora?
I've been told to take deep breaths a lot and to just like center my focus on one point in a big auditorium so that it helps me. And then what works, maybe having no cards or practicing with people. One thing that I like to do is I have a bunch of stuffed animals, so I like to think they're people and I'm giving them my presentation, which helps a lot with mine.
I like the stuffed animals. Willow?
Practice in the space if you can. So, if you were giving a Kohn lecture in the iZone, to come and try it out in the iZone before you did it for real.
Right. Anybody else? Anything that works really well for you? Caitlin?
I've been told to look at a specific point in the room and just stare at it the whole time. I found that doesn't work very well for me. I need to look at different people and stare them in the eyes.
The eyes doesn't make you nervous?
No, it makes me feel better. I think that's just a me thing.
No, it's a good one. It helps you feel connection.
Yeah, it helps me feel connected to people.
Okay.
But yeah, I think that's what works for me. But it might just be me.
Stunning. Okay, cool. Let's move on then to a grounding exercise. Okay, first we'll do what is speech anxiety. So, speech anxiety, I looked into it to see how common it is, because I was curious. So, there's tons of different studies. For some reason, no one's Googled this since 2001. No one's pulled this since 2001. So, the stats are from 40% of people report it to up to 77%. So, huge number of people. And it shows that it's pretty prevalent, but it's also a really big gap. It can be from like slight nerves to like overwhelming, almost like paralyzing fear. I do want to say though, like caveat, speech anxiety is what I'll be tackling. Some people also struggle with general anxiety, and so that's a larger issue that we can't really tackle in this presentation. But there's resources for that on campus as well. So when we talk about speech anxiety specifically, what does that look like? Shaking is pretty common. That can be like your hands, maybe your hands tremble, someone's holding a piece of paper maybe, that's pretty common to see. Maybe it's also their whole body, sweating is pretty frequent, hands or the forehead, butterflies in the stomach. Sometimes it can even feel like just really strong nausea, rapid heartbeat, and then something that I struggle a lot with is speaking really quickly. I'm still tackling that. And then something I hear a lot from people that I tutor is they'll call it like brain freeze, or like their fight or flight is triggered, and then generally it's just sort of this idea of when you're giving a presentation, it's like your mind's wiped and you forget the next thing you're going to say, and you sort of freeze up. And so I'll be talking about in this presentation how you can mitigate that, but that's a pretty common thing that happens with speech anxiety, and that makes you even more anxious. So one big thing though is remembering that it's normal. You all raised your hands, so we all sort of deal with speech anxiety at some point, and recognizing that it's normal and there's ways to deal with it, I think is the first step. So, grounding activity. I wanted to ask all of you guys if maybe we can close our eyes and take a deep breath together. So starting with one inhale in, deep breath in, 1, 2, 3, hold it, and then breathe out, 1, 2, 3, breathe in, 1, 2, 3, breathe out, and as you do that, think about how your shoulders are resting. Are they tense? Are they relaxed? Maybe as you breathe out, relax them a little bit. Are your knees, are your ankles crossed? Are they uncrossed? Are you gripping your hands? Are they relaxed? Sort of think about how your body is holding itself and if there's tension there. In your next breath out, try and release as much tension from your body as you can. Let's do one final group breath out together. Breathe in, 1, 2, 3. Hold it. Breathe out, 2, 3. Okay, how did that feel, guys? Do we feel a little bit less stressed out?
Yeah.
Okay.
I need you to narrate that for me every day.
It's like maybe iZone is not a good spot for that. But this is something that I found particularly useful before presentations. It helps lower your heart rate. It helps ground you. Not only is it common for mindfulness techniques, but it also is really great to find the link between the body and the mind. A lot of times you'll notice the tension that you hold in your body will also manifest itself when you're giving speeches. So it's like when your hands are tense, maybe you're somebody who doesn't use hand gestures, and then you can target that and you can work on doing hand gestures. Or maybe if your whole body was tense, you're somebody who doesn't implement body movement. So sort of using these techniques and regularly grounding yourself can be really great in targeting speech anxiety. So that was the grounding activity. Thank y'all for humoring me. I wanted to move on to mental prep. So we sort of identified the physical moments of nervousness, but there's also mental ones that I think are really important that can help with speech anxiety. Identifying your nervousness, or I guess the thoughts that can be causing your nervousness, is really important. So it'll be things like, someone's like, I'm feeling really anxious because I think everyone's going to think I'm being really silly, or I'm going to say something really stupid. Okay, well what's the stupid thing, for example? Maybe what the stupid thing is you're just going to forget everything. Well, what can you do to make sure that you don't forget everything? You can practice more. Or you can make sure that you know your topic really well, so even if you forget everything, you can just come up with a new sentence after taking a break. And making sure that you've identified all of these things that are sort of feeding into your anxiety can help lessen those feelings of stress. And that sort of ties into the second point of the more you become an authority on your topic and the more organized you are, the less stressed you're going to be. And then the more you practice those things, the more of an expert you are, the more grounded you are, the overall better you're going to feel and the less anxiety you're going to feel. So it's sort of like this loop that you have. So that's one big thing when it comes to mental prep, is identifying the nervousness, knowing the topic, and then practicing over and over. That's sort of like the golden rule among speaking fellows, is practice, practice, practice. I did also want to say, a lot of times people will be like, oh, my mind's white, it's blank, or I speak so fast that I choke up, and then I need a moment, or maybe like you need to take a sip of water and you don't know when to do it. That's when the power of the pause, that's my one cat one, power of the pause comes in. So basically that's when you finish your point, maybe it's a point that you really want to impress upon the audience, and then you pause for a moment, you let them digest it. Not only does it make your point more powerful, it makes it, it gives you a second to sort of gather your bearings, take that sip of water, or think through your mind, what is that next point that you've just blanked on, what do you want to say next, and then you can move on. It instills more confidence in you, it makes the audience think that you're more confident than you actually are, and it starts developing this cycle of like good vibes between you two, and it helps you feel more confident as a speaker. Okay. Moving on to physical prep that you can do, things that you can do the day of. You can wear clothes you feel more confident and comfortable in. That's a really common tip that I feel like is silly to say, but it should always be said. Wearing an itchy sweater that you're going to sweat in is awful. Don't do that. I've done it. I regretted it. And then knowing the speech situation. What I mean by that is knowing how many people might be in the audience. So, for example, you think that you're presenting to a group of 10 people, 40 people pull up, you're going to be stressed out of your mind, you're starting off on a bad foot. Or knowing the location, so you make sure that you don't arrive late, knowing the technology situation, so you can have the adapter. All of these things instill a sense of control that allows you to like eliminate all of these unnecessary factors that can put more anxiety in your body. And then the other thing is finding friendly faces in the crowd. That's really great. In a classroom, it might be classmates that you have. Sometimes it's the organizer if you don't know anybody. But being able to, every time that you feel that spike of anxiety, look at someone and see them smiling and nodding, helps you then like assuage those fears and be able to boost a little bit of confidence, and it brings back that idea of like building that cycle of positivity and reinforcing your confidence. Next, I want to move on to the various approaches that I mentioned at the beginning. First, I want to talk about TED Talks. It's like an unaddressed thing I feel in the public speaking community. I read a really interesting Forbes article about how TED Talks is actually hurting us a little bit, especially with novice speakers. So they have really polished delivery, and a lot of novice speakers or college students will try to look at them as an example or try to compare themselves to them, and what that can do is it can increase our anxiety because we won't match up to them because we aren't TED Talk speakers. So there's this really high standard being set, and we're not seeing the really rigorous process they're going through. And what happens is when we inevitably don't reach those standards of like perfect delivery and tone and hand gestures and body movement, then we feel really awful and anxious. But really what it should be is we can take inspiration. We can look at, oh, I really love this hand gesture, or I really love how they use this example of tone. I can implement this in my next presentation, but there's no need to try and match it one for one. And that's sort of like the little side tangent I wanted to say with TED Talks, is that they can set unrealistic expectations and worsen your anxiety. And moving on, I want to talk about two attitudes when it comes to speech anxiety. The first is the fake it till you make it attitude, which can be really effective for some people. Nervousness is typically invisible. A lot of people, if they don't tell their audience that they're nervous, their audience will never pick up on it. Unless you're somebody who maybe like trembles with their voice or their hands or whatever, their audience might have no idea, and it can fly under the radar. And then you can sort of like, that idea of the positive circle of confidence being built can continue, where you might be nervous, but your audience doesn't know, so they'll give you good feedback and nod, and then you will feel empowered, and they will then feel more confident in you. Throughout your journey as a public speaker, you will sort of lose that anxiety as you go, but that's not foolproof, and that's not assured. So I feel like it's important to take that with a grain of salt. And then also some people can't hide the fact that they're nervous, and prefacing it with a joke can be really great, and being able to tell their audience, hey, I'm feeling a little bit nervous, can really make them feel personable. Having said that, it is true that sometimes telling your audience that you're feeling nervous makes it so your audience is expecting you to mess up, and then there's that tension there. So when you do mess up, there isn't somebody nodding and smiling and there to support you because they're waiting for that. I do want to say my personal philosophy is to sort of accept the fact that you have a little bit of fear and to use it, because it's normal to feel speech anxiety, and using that nerves and turning that nervous energy into enthusiasm can really make you productive and can make you a better speaker. So you can channel it into your hand gestures, you can channel it into rehearsing and practicing more and making yourself as refined of a speaker as possible, because that practice will eventually make you feel more prepared. There are people who have a sort of a toxic relationship with public speaking, wherein they don't like public speaking, so they won't practice, and therefore they'll do the assignment the day before or the day of, and then they will have a brain freeze, or they'll have a presentation they don't feel good about, and so they'll do it again the next time, and it will be this endless cycle of hating public speaking, where if you do put in the work and you do channel this nervous energy, eventually you will feel more comfortable and you will be able to harness that fear and create a more positive relationship that could eventually lead to you feeling less anxious long term. So it's all about accepting that fear. Because at the end of the day, you can give a phenomenal presentation and be really scared the whole time. In fact, that speech anxiety is a motivator that encourages you to be well prepared, as long as you remember to practice, practice, practice. So thank y'all so much for listening. I hope that was a little bit helpful.
Caro. And up next we'll hear from Alison. Alison is a senior double majoring in health policy and economics. But before we get started, I want to talk a little bit about the Speaking Fellows. Has anyone visited the Speaking Fellows before, had a session? Awesome. And what was your experience with the Speaking Fellows?
Extremely positive.
Wow.
For those who haven't heard of the Speaking Fellows before, we offer public speaking, tutoring, and anything in regards to presentations, speeches, interview practice, even casual conversation practice as well. We're located in the writing, speaking, and argument program right in the hallway. And essentially you can book appointments either online or stop in for drop-ins. We have several hours located throughout the week, and we are opening on Sunday. So be sure to stop by when you can. Okay, so now we're going to hand it over to Alison.
In the theme park?
Next to it.
Yeah, it was not in the park.
Serena was. Obviously, the driver's winning.
It will be wild.
Hey, okay. Graduation is the 15th and 16th, but I guess everybody's on. Well, yeah. semesters. Yes, that. Yes. Looks really cute.
It's interesting to go drinking and then roller coasters. You know?
Well, we get to do this like
Yeah.
Hello. Which one sounds better? This one? This one?
Just make sure you hold it close to your mouth. If you bring it farther away, we can't hear you.
Okay, sounds good. Hi everyone. Thanks so much, Maddie, for introducing me. Like she said, my name is Allison, and I'm a senior here. I'm one of the speaking fellows. And so naturally, as a senior, as I'm sure lots of seniors are experiencing right now, I'm having a lot of post-grad anxiety right now about lots of the usual things, like jobs and grad schools and career aspects and money and all that stuff. But I think maybe I have the wrong priorities in life, because I think what I'm really dreading about post-grad is honestly moving so far away from my friends at college and having to make new friends in the real world. It's weird though, because I actually think I'm someone who really enjoys meeting new people and is someone who's very good at making new friends and meeting new people, but I think where the dread really kicks in is when I think back to the start of my college experience, when I was going through the same process of making new friends, and I was having to have this same exact conversation like 10 times per day. And I'm sure you guys can also relate as well. Hi, I'm Allison. It's so nice to meet you. Where are you from? Oh, you're from New Jersey. Like, nice. Yeah, it's super cool. I'm from Portland, Oregon. It is pretty far away from here. I am, in fact, a liberal, yes, like all the other people from Oregon. What's your major? Nice, your bio on the pre-med track. I haven't heard that one before yet, Please tell me more about Chem 131 and Bio 110. Yeah, that sounds really, really tough. Like, please tell me more, I'm sure we've all been there, right? We've all had the same conversation 10 times over and over again. Like, we're all sick of it, And we've mastered this exact same formula of small talk. And there's kind of two main reasons why, There's kind of two main reasons why we hate this conversation so much, right? It boils down to two different reasons. Number one, it's boring and predictable. Like, we might as well be reading from like cue cards at this point, Like, I only have so much to say if you tell me you're from New Jersey. You only have so much to say when I tell you I'm from Portland, right? And number two, I think it's impersonal, and it doesn't really reveal anything substantial about the other person. And I think these two things boil down to one singular word: authenticity, or more so, a lack of authenticity. And I think authenticity is kind of a big buzzword in communication right now, for kind of various reasons. But I think it makes sense because, we're living in a digital age where, we're constantly exposed to this influx of, posed influencer content on Instagram, or like AI-generated reels where you're like, okay, is this real or is this AI? Like, it's really hard to tell at this point, right? And so it makes sense that people are craving something real. Number two, I think we hear demands for authenticity, especially in like mass public speaking, especially from people like politicians. But I personally argue that we need authenticity in casual, one-on-one conversations, now more than ever, especially as feelings of isolation and a sense of lack of community become more and more ubiquitous in our society, which is what inspired my Kohn Lecture topic today. And so, turning it over to the audience, when I say authentic speaker, what are some things that you guys think of off the top of your head?
Like being true to yourself.
Being true to yourself.
Unscripted.
Accents.
I was going to say not reading from a script.
Yeah.
I was going to say, like, asking questions you're actually interested in knowing about.
That's a great way to segue into my my main point, which I think there might be a misconception, first of all, that in order to be an authentic communicator, you have to be like super socially savvy or naturally comfortable with small talk. And I'm not going to stand up here and lie and say to you guys like, oh no, like small talk is easy for everyone, it's same for introverts and extroverts, because that's just actually not true, right? But I'd push back on the notion that being extroverted is a necessary condition to becoming a great conversationalist or an authentic speaker. And I think for me, when I thought about this topic, I think bringing authenticity to a conversation to me is a matter of having a genuine interest in the other person, and not a matter of being kind of like charming or likable or alluring in conversation. And so I think with the negative connotations surrounding small talk, it's really easy to lose sight of the fact that at its core, a conversation is a way for two people to learn and get to know one another. I think, of course, when we enter a conversation with, this idea in our head, like I have to listen to this person, complain about, Chem 131 for 20 minutes, or I have to, pretend to care about this person's hometown for 20 minutes, whatever. Yeah, we're gonna have a boring conversation, obviously, right? But, I don't think, though, as people, we appreciate, just truly how complex humans are in general. And as obvious or maybe pseudo-deep this may sound, I think it's genuinely incredible to think about how different and unique people's outlooks on life, their attitudes are, and their values are. Sure, for example, let's say you're in a conversation talking about hobbies, right? Yeah, at first glance you're talking about kind of something surface level, hobbies, you learn from the other person that they like soccer, or they like to sew, or they like to go hiking with friends, right? But I think with some probing, I think you can learn a person's hobby, and that can offer really great insight into more deeper questions, such as, are you a competitive person by nature? Is spending alone time a priority for you? Are you more of a creative thinker or an analytical thinker? And I think having the mindset of believing that we can truly learn something from every single person we cross paths with can transform the way we engage in conversation and take it from something that we do, out of social conventions or to go through the motions, into something that's very meaningful and enjoyable. And so the question is, how do we break out of this small talk formula? I think the first thing, it makes sense that after all this talk about being genuinely curious about other people's lives, is that the first tip is to learn how to ask thoughtful, meaningful questions. I think so often we resort to waiting for the other person to ask the questions first, and then just being like, you answer, and you're like, what about you? And it's okay, it's the same conversation over and over again, right? But I think to be properly and meaningfully engaged in conversation is to want to deepen your understanding about what the other person's talking about, and that can only come from asking questions. So even when talking about mundane topics, there are ways to prompt conversation and to dig a little deeper. For example, instead of stopping at just asking, oh, do you have any siblings, or how many siblings do you have? You can kind of reframe it into revealing something more personal about the person's character, For example, how has being the oldest daughter influenced your outlook on friendships and relationships? Which people think I'm joking when I say this, but I genuinely do ask questions like this all the time. And I think with that, you might be thinking to yourself, okay, that's so cringe and personal, and people aren't going to want to answer those kinds of questions. But I think we'd be surprised at just how willing people are to reveal personal things about themselves, especially when you're willing to be personal and vulnerable yourself first. People will be taken aback by your questions, I will admit, from personal experience, because, again, we're so used to having surface-level conversations. But once we show the other person that we ourselves are comfortable enough with being personal, I think it builds this kind of sense of conversational intimacy that lets kind of both parties engage with one another more deeply. And by no means am I, encouraging you guys to trauma dump on some poor girl that you just met 2 seconds ago, right? But I do think, though, revealing an embarrassing story that happened to you, or, a personal shortcoming, or a small hardship that you're having that week, can be a very powerful tool to build authenticity and to build deeper conversations. Lastly, I think that this is something that people a lot of times struggle with. I've spent all this time emphasizing the way that we have conversations will change when we believe that everyone has something meaningful to say. But I think that we forget this ourselves. Conversations are a two-way street, and I think people forget that we also have important things to contribute as well. I think we can, work on becoming curious about other people and learn how to ask more thoughtful questions. But if we're unable to believe that we ourselves are worth, being curious about, then we're failing to communicate as our true selves, or, in other words, being authentic. Thank you.
Okay, now we have some time for some Q&A, so if Caro can come back up here. Does anyone have any questions that Caro or Alison could answer?
Okay. All right. Wait, is this on? Hello?
Yes.
Oh my god, okay. So, do you not like small talk, or do you think that, because part of me is generation, I was talking about this with my roommate.
Gotcha.
No, I'm talking about like boomers.
Okay.
The older generation
Oh.
is
Yeah.
single-handedly holding up small talk, but I think it's good because like we need it. Because it's really lonely when we're all on our phones and we don't talk about anything in like elevators. Do you think that it's important to have like inauthentic conversations like those as well?
That's a good question. I guess I use maybe the term small talk too liberally in my presentation. I guess I didn't think about things like, you know, in the elevator and stuff. I think that's hard. I mean, when I was making this presentation, I was trying to be also aware of the fact that people, you know, social anxiety is a real thing, you know? Like, I think obviously one-on-one when we're sitting with each other and having an in-depth conversation, like, we can have small talk or kind of casual conversation, but I think social anxiety makes it particularly hard to have those kind of like, short, quick interactions with strangers, like in the elevator, for example. So I think from a more, I guess, progressive or more inclusive standpoint, I think that it makes sense that, you know, the younger generation is kind of trying to move away, I guess, from feel like it's rude to not have small talk, but I definitely think, you know, it's a nice thing to be polite, right? Again, like I said at the start, like, I think when people are always on their phones, they're always on social media, whatever, you know, I think it's becoming an increasingly isolated society, like whatever, you know, and I think that those small things, small interactions can kind of maybe fill in those holes. I don't know. What do you think, Caro?
I kind of view small talk as like training, and so it's important to keep it in order to make sure that we don't accidentally become desensitized to normal human interactions. So my concern is when we're like 50, we won't speak to people anymore that we don't know, and I think it's really important if I'm on an airplane to be able to turn to someone and just talk to them without nothingness, because that's like basic human connection, and I feel like we're losing that. So then to do this massive leap of like, tell me about your dead dad is like a lot. But I also see that it's important because it's almost like the fact that we have these phone screens, it's almost like we are unable to do small talk, so now we have to jump to like trauma dumping in order to be even slightly vulnerable.
Yeah, and I guess I'm not promoting people, again, within the first 2 minutes, asking people about like their really personal, whatever, upbringings and stuff, but I think, you know, and this is, again, maybe I use small talk too liberally, but I also even mean this with among friends and stuff as well. Like, I think so often we get stuck into this routine of like, oh, how's your day? How are classes? Like, how's your lab? Like, I don't, like, you know, no one really cares, whatever, you know? But I think that, like, you know, even with our friends, there's always more that we can learn about each other, and I think those kinds of casual one-on-one conversations is more so, I guess, maybe what my presentation was about, if that makes sense. So. Yes.
I have a question for Alison. And it's related to your topic, but it's also just related to something I've always really admired about you and that I think you're really good at. You are really good at talking to anyone. And I think that the model of conversation that you're advocating for here, of people bringing their authentic selves and being vulnerable, has so many benefits. But a potential thing that might scare people is that might mean the people you're talking to bring up things that you don't agree with, or that make you uncomfortable, or that make you want to shut down a conversation and leave. And one thing that I've always really admired about you, and you've talked about your experience, is being able to talk with people that you like vehemently disagree with and still have conversation. So I was wondering if you could provide us with some, and I'm like genuinely asking because I need to get better at this, with some guidance for how you approach those conversations where you bring your authentic self, they bring their authentic self, and unfortunately it's not a match, but you still want to you still need to work with that person, or it's a person who's going to be in your life, and you want to be able to have those authentic conversations even with someone that you really, really disagree with.
Right. I guess just anecdotally, like I'm from Portland again, so like I made in the joke I made, like I am a liberal, whatever, you know, and like I remember in like 2020, when like obviously with Black Lives Matter, you know, surging and stuff like that, you know, even in my very progressive hometown, like there were still people obviously who like be posting, you know, conservative stuff, and I was the kind of person who would like be fighting these people on the internet, and like I look back and I just like cringe at it because like it's just like not productive at all. But I think when I came to college was the first time that I truly like engaged with people that I did not agree with or did not understand, like whatever, all kind of stuff, right? So I think like I totally understand that initial reactions, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But I think as I get older, I something I realized, especially I remember specifically in my junior year, is like I think people are very much more relatable than we give them credit for. Like even if like let's say me and Caro are but let's say that we're very close friends and that we are having this disagreement, even if I don't disagree with Caro's actions or or their behavior or whatever, I think at the end of the day, like I could see a situation where if I was in Caro's shoes, I would do the exact same thing, And I think it's always important to take a step back and like past our initial, I guess, anger or upsetness or whatever, and realize that like, okay, this is this is like cringe, but we're all humans at the end of the day. This is a very normal reaction, and I think that can kind of diffuse some of the tension and realize that, okay, if things were slightly different, or if something in my upbringing was slightly different, then I might have the exact same reaction as Caro, for example, So I think having that kind of like filter or screen behind everything, or try at least, behind the things that I say or do, I think is helpful for me at least to in talking to these people. I don't know if those made sense, but yeah.
For both of you, what's helped the most with your experience with speech anxiety?
Honestly, well, I know this is an unrelatable answer. I've talked about this in Writing 247 a lot. I kind of enjoy impromptu speaking. Like I kind of enjoy kind of coming up with stuff on the fly and stuff.
You're an adrenaline junkie.
I'm an adrenaline. I was finishing this like 5 minutes before. I went up here to present. So I think I enjoy that. Slash, that's just the way that I've just been accustomed to do work. I think but I think again with speech anxiety, I think Caro mentioned. It's such a relatable thing, right? Every single person in the audience has done it, and I can never recall a time where I've seen someone nervous on stage and be like, ooh, that person was not prepared, ooh, that person, clearly looks like they're super nervous. It doesn't matter, because, okay, I've done the exact same thing, So it's every single person, so I think having that, I guess, feeling assured and, that people aren't gonna judge me, which, again, I get not everyone thinks in that way, I think is helpful for me in dealing with my speech anxiety, or, I guess, enjoying doing stuff on the fly, so.
I'm going to take a page out of your presentation into the vulnerability. 5 years of therapy helped a lot. And then also finding the passion in the topics. So I hated presenting, but I joined MUN and I realized I really liked debate and politics. So that helped. And then with every presentation after that, picking a topic that I genuinely liked really helped me then slowly become desensitized.
In my experience, I feel the notion of small talk you brought up, Alison, is that it's very American, if that makes sense. Sure. I feel in my experience with people who are not native to America, the whole oh hi, how are you? I'm good, how are you? Even that alone is kind of wild, and sort of a cultural ritual or anthropological blah blah blah. So I was wondering what both of your thoughts are on how we can bridge that gap, or is it just unique to America? Or is that something we should be promoting to other places? I'm just curious.
That's a great question, Andrew. I think in my experience, working in the center, I think almost 100% of my sessions are conversation practice with international students who are practicing English. I think literally 95% probably. And I think with that, you're right, it's certainly a cultural thing. Even when I look at my own parents, I can notice the cultural differences. But I think, I don't know, maybe, I don't know if this is that's hard, you want to be sensitive to the cultural differences, but at the end of the day, people international students, for example, are here in America, and it's the way that they want to make friends, right? They want to make connections, and they want to have a sense of community here, especially considering the fact that they're so far away from home. And I think that the way that you do that is by honestly making small talk, right? And I think it's not personally, I don't see it as an issue when students come in wanting to work on that skill and us helping them with that skill. If at the end of the day, that's what's going to help them be their happiest and like their most successful self in America, which I don't know again, if that's not progressive too.
I think the turning to a plane and talking to a stranger is pretty uniquely American, but it is also dying out, I think is what I was saying earlier. It isn't like a lot of, at least I'm Spanish, so in Spain we also talk to strangers, but not on airplanes, we do it like at a bar. So it is like in other countries, and it doesn't die out in the US, other people still do it, and I think it's great to talk to strangers. I'm team continuing that, and I love that we do conversation practice in the center. I think it's a great thing to do. Putting pressure on people to do it is the issue for sure. I think entering every situation with a lovely open heart is the key, and understanding that you can't. I think the issue is when, I guess in this case, an American or whatever you are coming into a space and expecting you can force a conversation with someone. That's not cool. It's that cultural competence of navigating the space and realizing there might be somebody who wants to have a conversation with you, but you can't force it. That's the key. Yeah, I think the importance is also that there's a generational element there. I think that answers the question. Any other questions?
Thank you all for coming out to our Kohn Lectures for January.
We open on Sunday. Make it appointment.
I'm so happy. Yeah, I'm fully booked. Sunday is the blessed day.
Was it last semester? You also?
Oh.